There are lies that feed something inside us, literally. In a small clinic in Nagano, Japan, we learned that some truths are impossible to hide when our own body becomes a witness to our deceit. This is the disturbing story of a man whose dishonesty awakened something that should have stayed dormant forever. Our protagonist always saw his lies as small acts of social survival. A mid-level employee at an insurance company in Tokyo, he'd built a career on half-truths and empty promises. It's just business, he'd tell himself whenever he withheld critical details from clients or padded numbers in reports. The first strange sensation came on a rainy Tuesday in October. During a meeting where he lied about quarterly results, he felt a faint tickle in his stomach, a subtle, almost imperceptible tingling. He chalked it up to anxiety or maybe the overly strong coffee he'd had at lunch. But the tickling returned. Always after a lie, always in the same spot, a few inches below his navel. He started avoiding mirrors, especially after showers, when his bare skin revealed a slight bulge where there'd once been only the natural curve of his abdomen. His wife noticed his growing unease. "Honey, is everything okay? You're always touching your stomach," she said during a quiet dinner. He forced a smile and lied again. "Just a muscle ache from working out." In that moment, the tickle turned into something else. A pressure, like something inside him had moved. That night, alone in the bathroom, he finally mustered the courage to examine the bulge. Under the cold glare of the fluorescent light, it seemed to have a defined shape, familiar contours, but impossible ones. When he pressed gently with his fingers, he felt something that made his blood run cold. Joints, small but unmistakable. Weeks passed, and the lies continued. Falsified reports, made-up excuses for coming home late, broken promises to his kids. With each deception, the thing inside him grew. Not just in size, but in definition. He could feel each finger forming slowly, like a plant sprouting in slow motion inside his flesh. The worst was at night. Lying beside his sleeping wife, he felt movement. Small, involuntary twitches that seemed to match the rhythm of his breathing. It was like having a conscious parasite, something that responded to his emotions, and especially to his dishonesty. He decided to see a doctor, but lied even there. He left out details about when and how it started, inventing conventional physical symptoms. The doctor, an older man with thick glasses, gave him a cursory exam and diagnosed occupational stress. He prescribed muscle relaxants and suggested a vacation. But as he left the clinic and got into his car, the hand inside him clenched violently. For the first time, he was absolutely certain the thing knew when he lied, and it was getting stronger. 3 months later, he could no longer hide it. The bulge had become a visible deformity even under loose clothing. His stretched skin took on a faintly pinkish hue, and on colder mornings he swore he could see veins pulsing just beneath the surface. He invented a rare illness for his wife, claiming it was a benign tumor the doctors were still investigating. Another lie that fed the creature inside him. That night, it pressed against his skin so hard he nearly screamed. The joints were now perfectly distinguishable to the touch. 5 fingers, a palm, even what felt like an opposable thumb. At work, his lies grew more elaborate. Stories about urgent doctor visits to justify absences, increasingly fabricated reports to cover his inability to focus. Colleagues began to whisper. Some noticed how he always kept one hand over his abdomen, as if guarding something precious or terrifying. One afternoon, during an important presentation, the unthinkable happened. While blatantly lying about impossible profit projections, the hand moved. A sharp, visible jerk through his shirt that silenced the entire room. He mumbled an excuse about abdominal spasms and bolted to the bathroom. Locked in a stall, he lifted his shirt and saw something that nearly made him faint. His skin was stretching, forming the perfect imprint of a human hand, as if someone inside were pressing against a transparent membrane. The fingers moved slowly, probing the limits of their fleshy prison. He tried to stop lying. For 2 whole weeks, he forced himself to be completely honest. He confessed small mistakes at work, admitted to forgotten chores at home, told the truth, even when it hurt. And for a few days, the hand seemed to quiet. The movement slowed, the pressure eased, but complete honesty was impossible to sustain. Social demands, professional expectations, the little white lies that grease human interaction, all conspired against his resolve. And when he finally gave in, lying about finishing a project he hadn't even started, the retaliation was immediate. The hand didn't just move. It pushed, hard enough to create a grotesque bulge that tore the buttons off his shirt. People in the elevator stared with barely concealed horror as he desperately tried to hide the deformity with his arms. That night, alone in his apartment, his wife had taken the kids to their grandparents' house until he felt better. He finally grasped the terrifying truth. The hand wasn't just a consequence of his lies. It was learning, growing not just in size, but in intelligence. And it had plans of its own. 6 months after the first tingling, he'd become a recluse. Getting indefinite medical leave from work was easy. Show the deformity to any doctor, and they'd be rattled enough to sign anything. But even that half-truth fed the creature. It seemed to thrive not just on outright lies, but on any form of dishonesty, no matter how small. The hand moved constantly now, small, restless gestures he could feel and sometimes see through his taut skin. It was like living with an unwanted tenant who never paid rent but always made their presence known. During meals, it tapped against his ribs. While he slept, it caressed other parts of his body from the inside, stirring sensations both indescribable and disturbing. The worst were the quiet moments. Alone, with nothing to do but feel the alien presence within him. He could swear it was trying to communicate. Tiny, rhythmic taps, like Morse code carved in flesh. He tried decoding them, but whenever he focused too hard, the hand stopped, as if it knew it was being watched. One morning, while showering, he noticed something new. The skin over the hand had started to turn translucent. Not fully transparent, but thin enough to reveal sharper outlines. Fingernails were visible now, small crescent shapes pressing against the skin barrier like prisoners testing the bars of a cell. He stopped accepting visitors. Concerned friends, persistent family, all were pushed away with increasingly elaborate excuses. Each social lie, every forced "I'm fine," made the hand pulse with satisfaction. It was as if it knew it was winning, turning his life into a prison built of necessary deceits. The phone rang one grey afternoon. It was his wife, saying she was coming home. "The kids miss you," she said, and he almost told the truth. Almost said it'd be better if they stayed away. Instead, he mumbled, "I miss you guys too," and the hand inside him writhed with pleasure. That night, lying alone for the last time, he made a desperate decision. He grabbed a kitchen knife and held the tip over his stretched skin. But when he pressed, the hand reacted. It darted away from the blade, sliding beneath his skin like a fish evading a predator. No matter where he tried to cut, it always escaped, always one step ahead. That's when he grasped the final terrifying truth. The hand wasn't just a parasite feeding on his lies, it was preparing, growing, waiting. And when it had fed enough on his dishonesty, when it was strong enough, it would do what any hand does naturally. It would try to get out. The next morning, when his wife arrived with the kids, she found him sitting at the kitchen table staring at his abdomen. "Honey," she called softly. He looked up and smiled. A genuine smile for the first time in months. "I need to tell you something," he said, feeling the hand stir nervously. "A truth I should have told you a long time ago." But when he opened his mouth to speak, what came out was, I'm feeling much better. The treatment worked. The hand inside him relaxed, satisfied. And he knew with a certainty that crushed any hope that he'd never be able to tell the truth again. Because now there were two creatures living in the same body, and one of them had far more patience than the other. And sometimes, late at night when the family slept, he felt the hand waving. To whom, he never knew, but it always waved back.